Who would have ever thought that they'd make a fighting game based on Shaquille O'Neal, one of the greatest and most famous basketball players in history? Well, they did, and it was published by Electronic Arts, no less. I guess this was before everyone complained about them. It was also developed by a company called Delphine Software International, a company whose lineup includes the cinematic platformer Flashback. I wonder how they could have messed this up. When you start up the game, you realize that the title screen's music is incredibly annoying. Just listen. The same synthy note appears in just about every musical piece, and sometimes it's repeated ad nauseum, to the point where I'm not even going to play most of the game's music. It's not for you though, it's more for me. The game's story starts us off in Tokyo, Japan, where we visit an old kung fu dojo while Shaq is sightseeing. The man inside hints that we are destined to save a young boy named Nezu from the evil forces of Setra. Man, do I love excuse plots. Then our journey begins, and we're treated to a world map. From here, we can challenge any of the various characters to fights. And with any opponent you select, Shaq gives them a stern finger wagging. No. Bad dude. Don't piss on the carpet! So the first guy I fight, Diesel, seems a tad out of place for this fantasy setting we're supposed to be in. I think it's the hat. Anyway, we jump into battle and are introduced to some of the worst controls imaginable. B and C on the Mega Drive controller are for weak and strong attacks respectively, which makes sense, where A is used for your movement, such as backflips or forward runs. It's a bit cumbersome, but what makes it even worse is using Shaq's other attacks. As you may notice, all we're doing right now is kicks. Shaq's allowed to do punches, but in order to perform them, you must switch modes by pressing start. This replaces your kicks with punches and maps A to taunting instead. It's super inconsistent. With this control scheme, you're allowed to get away with spamming strong kicks over and over until the opponent inevitably does something about it. What's more, enemies don't have this control problem, and will beat you within an inch of your life, even on the normal difficulty. And that's not even getting into how this game's special moves are handled. In order to perform special moves, you must use directional inputs on the pad and press specific buttons, which makes sense. For instance, Shaq has an attack mapped to forward quarter circle and C, which allows him to deal damage at close range. Shaq's other move, a projectile, is done by forward, back, forward, and A. However, the way that the controls are handled means that 9 times out of 10, you'll run forward or taunt instead of performing the attack, and sometimes you'll step forward, only to cancel out an attack anyway. The character designs also really aren't worth noticing. They're all kind of generic, and while they're fairly well drawn, the Genesis's color palette isn't exactly the best for it. Since this game controls like ass, I'll let it slide and say that it's due to the limitations of the Genesis and its controller. Thankfully, the game was also released on the Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo games have always had differences between their Genesis counterparts, so maybe this one's good. Well, that's already an improvement. The music lacks that synthy stuff that makes my ears hurt. And hey, you have 6 buttons to work with. 2 punches, 2 kicks, an alternate mobility, and a taunt. Taunt's mapped to shoulder buttons. Jeez, Guilty Gear has met its match. The game's story is the same as the previous one, but this time features some additional lines of text. Don't worry, it makes up for that additional feature with having fewer characters than the Genesis version. The world map's layout is a bit different as well, with different opponents and less areas available to us from the start. At least now that we have more buttons, we can beat our enemies more easily, right? Nope, the game actually controls the bloody same as the Genesis version, only this time it somehow feels more imprecise. While performing Shaq's moves was inconsistent as all hell in the Genesis version, here it feels damn near impossible. I can't perform this projectile attack, even though I know what the input is. It's forward, back, forward, and punch. But I can't seem to pull it off, and I lose. At least I can fight a different character for once. Ooh, this one's a kitty! Also, holy shit, she's difficult. I hit her with a forward hard kick and it barely seems to do damage, while she's able to attack from all angles before I can even react. Fuck Seth or Eno, man. This one means business. To say that I don't like this character as much as Felicia from Darkstalkers or Misfortune from Skullgirls would be an understatement of a somewhat high magnitude. how truly wonderful this game is. It's got decent art direction and animation, but it doesn't have anything that makes a fighting game truly fun. You know what's great about a fighter? Being able to input a special move and have it work consistently, not having to fiddle around in the vain hopes that you're able to do something. What's fun in a fighting game is the knowledge that any practice you put into a game will have some good come out of it, and not be in vain due to horrible, clunky controls. What's fun in a fighting game is the fact that no matter how daunting an input may seem at first, there can be a reward for it no matter how negligible. To say that this game doesn't stack up to the likes of Street Fighter 4, Guilty Gear XX, or even the old Street Fighter 2 games is being too generous. Yet, despite all its shortcomings, there's a bit of charm to it. After all, what are the games that you beat up princes, gang rats, and catwomen as a basketball player? Ragnar the Blood Edge doesn't play basketball, does he? No, he doesn't. He just punches people and curses a lot. Shaq Fu for Genesis and Super Nintendo gets an E. I'm not entirely sure how the Commodore Amiga version stacks up, but it's probably just as bad. It controls badly, and while there's some comedic charm to it, it's hidden under a layer of frustration, almost like the video game equivalent of Reddit. I can see why people want to destroy this game so badly.